Welcome back to my channel and welcome to this week's video. This week I'm going to be going through my top tips on how to do well in an Oxford/Cambridge interview. Now, remember, I'm from a languages background, so I'll tell you a bit about how my interview went, what I did in it, but the top tips towards the end of the video will be hopefully useful for everyone. Now, before we got started, I have some important news. You may have seen in the last two videos a link to a Twitter account. My lovely flatmate Tim / media manager Tim has set up a Twitter account. He's running it. I have no clue what's going on there, but do give it a follow. It's probably quite entertaining. Anyway, before we get started, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. Stick a comment down below if you find it helpful, if you have any questions or if you have any comments, and subscribe if you haven't already, because I really do appreciate it, and it also helps my channel look good. So it's really important. Let's get started. Okay, so let's start by talking about what happened in my interview. So, my interviews were online. I went on the Teams call and I had a chat with my future tutors, basically. In my French one, I was presented with a text that I had to translate. I was probably given 2, 3, maybe even 4 minutes to read through, have a think about how I was going to translate it. And then I did. Sort of out loud, without any notes, having not really thought about it too much. After that, we sort of spoke about what the text could be about. Obviously, the text was in French, so I had to understand what was going on. That was obviously useful for the translation as well, but I also had to get a bit deeper into the text and the meaning of the text to talk about that. Now, as far as I can remember, because it was quite a while ago now, I then spoke in French for the last 10 minutes of the interview. I was not expecting to speak French for 10 minutes. I was expecting to speak French for maybe 2 minutes. But there we go. And we spoke about how there's a debate in France at the moment on whether we should, or there should be, gender-specific names for jobs. So, for instance, we have got some like l'acteur, l'actrice. But for something like a reader, we have lecteur, but no lectrice, or lectreuse, which would be a weird word. But yeah, so we spoke about this, and actually it was really interesting because it's the sort of things we spoke about in our oral classes in first year. So it was literally like being in an oral class, which was really good, actually. Absolutely petrifying, I won't lie to you. I thought I'd got everything wrong in that section of the interview, but I got through it, so that's good. In my Spanish interview, which I did second, and I actually did at home, it was online still, the French one I did in school, it was 20 minutes again, or thereabouts, and for the first 17 minutes, I did the same sort of thing. So I was given a text, I had to translate it in my head, and then read it out, well, sort of say my translation as I went through the text, and I may have even had to say this text, sort of speak through the text in Spanish first, so that they could check my pronunciation. I can't quite remember, but I think I had to. Now, the Spanish text was extremely hard, and I've spoken to my tutors about this since then, and apparently it's the hardest text they asked anyone to translate in interviews. So it was very hard, and trying to explain what was going on in the text was even harder. There was something to do with a cat and a piano and a theatre. Not quite sure what was going on there. It was very difficult. I then spoke quite a bit about my personal statement and what I'd written about in there, specifically the literature. I did do that a bit in the French as well, but less. And then we spoke in Spanish for 2 minutes about the drama exam I had about 5 minutes after my interview ended. This was during COVID, so I just had to go down to my drama teacher's house and perform in front of a computer. But that was the end of my Spanish interview. Now, I really enjoyed my interviews. That's a lie. I hated my French one. I was absolutely petrified, and I really enjoyed my Spanish one. But that was my experience. It'll be almost completely different for you. And that brings me nicely onto tip 1. Tip 1 is listen to what people say about their interviews. So listen to me, listen to other people on YouTube, read articles, talk to your teachers, talk to students from your school who have been to Oxford before, if you have any. Listen to what they tell you about the interview, but don't take any of it to heart. because I was told that I'd be speaking in French for a maximum of 2 minutes, and I ended up speaking in French for 10 minutes. So tip 1 is to sort of expect the unexpected. You can be fairly sure you'll be asked about your personal statement, so make sure you know your personal statement well. Number 2, they will probably ask you to translate a passage. Probably. Again, you can be fairly sure of that. And then, again, you can be fairly sure you'll be asked to speak in the language, whether it's for 10 minutes or for 2 minutes. I'm not sure. But that's tip number 1, expect the unexpected. Tip number 2 is be calm. It is so easy to get very stressed about interviews. It is probably the most stressful part of the whole application process, except for when you're waiting for an offer, waiting for that horrible email or lovely email. But it's hard work. It is, and it's very hard to stay calm. But at the end of the day, you'll just have to go in there and you'll have to do your best. And the more calm you are, the better you'll be thinking. So don't worry about the stress. Don't worry about the interview if you can. Go in, nice level-headed, and you'll be absolutely fine. Tip number 3, speak your thoughts. So during the translation process, I would read through the text as smoothly and as fluidly as I could while translating. If I came across a word or a phrase that I didn't understand, I would say, ooh, brillant is not brilliant. It's a false friend. But brillant could mean sort of, what's the word? Shiny. Yes, shiny. And that's essentially what I did. So I went through talking about my thought process, and by talking through my thought process, I revealed to my tutors how I work and whether I work in a logical way and whether they're impressed by the way I work. By showing your tutors how your brain works, they can tell whether you'd be a good fit for Oxford, because not everyone is. And that's through no fault of your own. It's just, it takes a very specific type of mind. I have friends who would have applied to Oxford, but they realised that actually they didn't really want to spend 8 weeks super intense doing all their work. They would be much happier elsewhere. So, this is an opportunity for tutors to see how you work, whether they'd like to see you in tutorials with them, because that's essentially what the interview is. It's a tutorial setting. As I said, in the French, we spoke about stuff that we spoke about in my oral classes later on. So, it's to see if tutors would like to see you in a tutorial. So be yourself, be calm, be likable, and there we go. Tip number 4, linking to that, is be yourself. Don't try and use super fancy words if you're not a super fancy word person in real life. Don't stress about seeming posh or intelligent or anything like that. If you've been asked to interview, remember, they want to see you, they want to hear you, so just be yourself. Think about how you would act normally and try and replicate that. Remember, the interview is one part of the application process, same as with the personal statement. The entrance exams and the work you have to send in, the interview is one part of the process. So don't worry about it too much and just be yourself. And tip number 5 is my usual one for these videos. Go and watch other people's videos. Go and read articles online. Talk to other people. See what their experiences are. Because I can't tell you everything. I've probably had a completely different interview experience to everyone else. So that is my last tip. Just take in as much information as you can, and that will really help you feel like you know what's coming, make you feel more confident about what's coming, and generally feel like it could be a fun experience. Because tutorials and therefore interviews are genuinely quite fun most of the time. So there we go. That is the end of this week's video. Remember to check the link down below for the Twitter. And if you like this week's video, do give it a thumbs up. Stick a comment down below if you have any questions. And subscribe if you haven't already. Good luck with your interviews, everyone. Stay tuned.